got this. So this is a mic that I have from another part of the house, but I'm going to use this because my little wireless ones don't work anymore. They've kind of pooped out on me. So I'm going to use this, and my voice is probably going to sound different on this microphone than the little wireless mics. And this is also going to be a little strange for me because I'm not going to be able to move around quite as much as I ordinarily would. And I can't really use the board. So I have to kind of, because if I turn around, then you won't be able to hear me. But I can turn around for a second. I'm just going to point to our topic. Okay, so, and I realize the camera's kind of high too. So it's one of these things that I kind of have to play with over time, but we'll get it figured out. So hold on a second here. AI and automation. So AI I think is going to end up being kind of a nothing burger, personally. I wouldn't cover this topic because it's not something that I know a lot about. There's going to be a lot more people out there that are probably going to be more knowledgeable. What I can do is I can look at it from a business standpoint, which is that I think AI is going to get scapegoated for a lot of layoffs that are probably coming. Now, there are some legitimate jobs that are going to be going away because of AI. That's true. There are also going to be a lot of jobs that are going to go away that were probably redundant in the first place. It's sort of like we've all seen the videos of the girl who day in the life of a tech employee that doesn't really do anything. She just kind of shows up and does whatever. That kind of stuff's going to go away. And I think a lot of it's going to be, it's going to be blamed on AI. A lot of companies are going to divest themselves of a lot of redundancy. Not only that, a lot of these companies, once you get to a certain point of big, the returns just aren't there. So you're not going to, I think that a lot of companies have maxed out. I mean, that's just, we talked about this before, where the percentage of return that people are getting, or that the companies are having to operate on, it isn't enough. They're not making enough money because they're on like 2 and 3% profit margins. Well, in order to have more profit, well, you either have to sell more stuff, right? In a declining economy, 93 countries are in demographic decline, or they're in birth rate decline. They're collapsing, okay, in terms of their population. Well, you're not going to be able to sell more stuff to them, right? So, like every girl of childbearing age isn't out to here with a kid. So you're not adding more people. Remember, we talked about this a long time ago. You have one way to grow an economy, and that's add people. If you're not adding people, then you can't grow, right? It's the definition. It's a textbook definition of a Ponzi scheme, right? It works great if you're adding people. As soon as you stop adding people and you have more people trying to take out than putting in, as soon as that happens, it implodes. The whole thing implodes. And there's no way to continue it forward. It's a mathematical certainty that it's going to come to an end. And I think AI is going to get blamed for a lot of stuff that was probably going to happen anyway. But they're going to be able to say, well, AI, it's that's the way. Like, no, it's you're being conned, because it's easier to tell somebody, some fancy story than it is to tell them the truth. It's sort of like the WEF had this whole thing with, where they said they can hook the stuff in, your ear pods, right, your earbuds, and then it's going to read your brain waves. Right. I'm not kidding. You can look this up. There was a whole speech on this, and they were saying it's going to read the employee's brainwaves, and it's going to be able to tell them if the employee is not paying attention at work. Right. And where their brainwaves are going to be different and everything. And I don't know if I talked about this before a while back, but that's phrenology 2.0. That's all that is. You can look up phrenology. Phrenology was reading the bumps on people's heads and being able to predict the future. That was considered high science in the 1860s. It's complete crap. It's complete quackery, all of it. So just keep that in mind, that when you're looking at a lot of this stuff, remember, a lot of things are going to get scapegoated, and AI is going to be just one of them. One of probably many different little things that they're going to come up with to try and say that, oh, well, it's all the fault of this or all the fault of that. AI is the middle class version, or the tech version of the immigrants took my job, right? That's what it's going to be. It's going to be one of those things. And by the way, don't get me wrong. I'm all for closing the borders. I mean, for a lot of reasons, actually, not just the employment aspect of that, but because you actually have a lot of people here that actually kind of need to work here, right? So that's not a topic for today. We'll come back to that. We've already talked about that quite a bit, but sometime I'll come back to that and I'll really dissect that. But the next phase of this is to talk about automation. Now, automation is one of these things that is, I don't think it's well understood, and I don't think it's understood because so many people have never run a business, right? We talked about that just briefly a few minutes ago. They know that most people have never done this stuff. They know that most people have never taken money out of their own pocket and gone and risked it in an entrepreneurial sense and started a company and done something with it, right? And then tried to make it work under the conditions that exist right now, particularly the conditions that exist with all the government regulations and things of that nature, right? Now, they know most people have never done that. They know most people have never gone into a bank and said, "Hey, give me money. I'm going to start this really cool idea for a company." They know most people have never done that. So it's pretty easy to kind of take advantage of people if they don't know it, right? So a lot of people don't understand how automation is not going to do what everybody claims that it's going to do. They're like, "Oh my God, it's going to be Blade Runner. We're going to have, robots are going to take everything over. They're going to do all these different jobs. They're going to drive all the trucks. They're going to do it." Like that's just they're not going to. That's not going to happen. It's this is a way of getting investors' money. Okay. Let me explain. You have a lot of young people in tech, right? And they've made a lot of money. In a lot of cases, it's not because they were financial geniuses. Okay, it's because and it's not to diminish their work. Don't misunderstand. Okay, but what happened is that a lot of those people, they came up with something cool, and then everybody else jumped on it. And when everybody jumped on it, they created a wave, right? A power wave kind of thing. And then what ends up happening with that is that those people then make a lot of money. The challenge is they didn't have a ton of failures. They had a ton of industry failures maybe, but they didn't have a bunch of broad failures, okay? And you need to have your failures in the broader sense, right? This is that whole argument about the trophy, the participation trophy society, right? This is what we have right now. We have a bunch of participation trophy people, okay? Well, in the real world, there isn't a participation trophy, which is why my walls have nothing on them. There's no plaques, no certificates, no degrees, nothing that show anything. I have my experience, and my experience is all internal, and that's all verifiable. I mean, you can talk to anybody who knows me, and they'll tell you, like, "Oh no, we've been through all that." I've seen them lose thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and so I'm like, yes. So that's the case, but those failures, right, are really important because then you learn what questions to ask later on. You learn what to look for if someone's trying to run a hustle on you, right? So what happens, this is why you have a bunch of people who got sucked into Theranos or FTX or any of these, like, it's because they didn't really know what they were doing. It's why you had a lot of celebrities willing to sell their celebrity to FTX. Well, they did that because they didn't know what to really ask about how any of that's going to work, right? And any of the detail side of that. So that said, the automation thing is following the same pathology. Let me explain. The electric truck. I think that the electric semi-truck guy, right, a guy who's being indicted right now for fraud, because they took a truck that looked kind of like all space agey, and they put it on a hill and rolled it down a hill. And when they rolled it down the hill, they tilted the camera at the same angle as the hill to make it look like it was flat ground. It's crap, and they swindled a lot of people, as I understand, right? I mean, I'm not a reporter. I'm not saying. I'm just saying, as I understand what happened, that like a lot of people kind of got hustled on that. They're like they put a lot of money into it, but there's no real actual business model to back any of that up. Well, there's a lot of that going on right now, and it's the automation thing that we're seeing that happening. Just like with the I saw a video. It's a video of the hot dog vend. It's like a hot dog vending thing, where you put your card in, or you swipe your card, and then it makes a hot dog for you, and then it doesn't work. It's like the automation to a certain point will work, but but automation is not going to do all of this stuff. It's not going to be Blade Runner. You're not going to have robots doing everything. You're not going to have that. You're not going to have Skynet. Right, you're not going to have any of that stuff that a lot of us. I'm a sci-fi fan, right? I mean, I can talk to you about all the sci-fi you want. I love sci-fi. Sci-fi is actually, but the thing is, the point about sci-fi, a lot of those books, whether it's Douglas Adams or H.G. Wells or any of the greats. Philip K. Dick, it doesn't matter who it is. Most of those guys, when they're writing this stuff, Arthur C. Clarke, when they're writing this stuff, they're using a fictional story to tell something that has a deeper meaning, right? As with most really great authors, they're not just writing a story so that you can have something to be mildly entertained. They're writing a story, and they're conveying to you a series of ideas through a fictional framework. Right? Rod Serling was the master of this, right? Go back and watch the old Twilight Zone episodes. Even though a lot of even his stuff was, I don't want to say regurgitations, but it was stuff that other science fiction authors had kind of posed these questions. And so they put these questions out there for people to, to ponder. And what would happen is that, when you talk to kids when they were younger, this is back long time ago when we treated kids like they were going to be adults one day, not just treated kids like they're going to be children until they're in their mid-50s or whatever the hell we're doing nowadays. You wanted kids to be able to have what's called active literacy. Active literacy is being able to read something and get something out of it more than just the surface story. Okay. So a lot of people have been seeing all of this science fiction stuff, right, throughout the course of a very long time. And they take the science fiction kind of literal. They start thinking, oh my God, because we have clamshell flip phones back in the 90s, well, that came from Star Trek. And so therefore the pathology is it's going to follow that along those lines. Like, yes and no. Some of maybe the hardware might look a little interesting because it's familiar, right? I mean, it's a marketing thing. Right. If it's familiar, then you're going to be more receptive to it. There's nothing harder to move than an awesome product that is the most incredible product in the world that nobody understands. Right. Like nobody gets it. It's too far outside of their comfort zone. They're not familiar with it, so they don't know what the hell to do with it, and they don't know how to process it and stuff. I have allergies, by the way. That's why I'm constantly doing this. So anyway, and there's a lot of pollen right now. Anyway, so the automation that you think is coming is not coming, right? It's a great way to get people's investment capital. It's a great way to separate people from their money, and for you to spend a lot of time trying to cook up some kind of idea that's going to kind of work. But when you start applying it to real world scenario, real world conditions, right? Okay, let's take our electric semi-truck. They know that almost nobody in this country has driven over Snoqualmie Pass in the wintertime in a semi-truck. They know that the majority of people in this country have never driven over 4th of July Pass or gone through Montana in the wintertime in whiteout conditions on ice. They know that most people have never done that. They've never been going between Laramie, Wyoming and Cheyenne, Wyoming on I-80 in the wintertime in the most horrible conditions in a semi-truck. They know most people have never done that. They have no clue what's out there. None. They have no idea what's out there. So that ignorance, because they know that there's a lot of people, even in tech, that don't know to ask any of these questions about real world conditions and what kind of not just the conditions of the vehicle, but what about conditions for the driver? Like no one really asks anything. Well, no, it's going to be all automated. There's not going to be drivers. So you're not going to actually have that. You're just not. That's great fiction. right? And hey, you know what? Maybe someday, in a perfect world, after we've mastered everything. Look, we got people who can't even master their own goddamn personal finances. So I don't know how we're going to do that, right? It's kind of like my little joking comment about AI. Like, we haven't even mastered I yet in this world. Now we're going to talk about AI. Why don't you guys stop and master I first? Then we can move on to AI. Okay. But they know most people don't know any of this stuff. They don't do any of these things on a daily basis. They're not field researchers. They don't so for me, I'm lucky enough, I don't know if you want to call it that, but I'm lucky enough to be a field researcher. So for me, my job is to break shit. That's my whole business is in the grander scheme of things. I own heavy equipment. I'm also a contractor. We do, I work in electricity specifically. We do a lot of these things. And in the overarching business model of me, of who I am as a person, right? I mean, this is just my personality, is to break shit. My job, for example, like software testers, right? What what a software tester is. Software tester's whole job is to go break it, right, and find the bug or find the error, that it's not going to work. So my job is to put in, you're like your customer, you put in a credit card number, and on the third number of the 16-digit number or 15-digit number respectively, you add a letter like a B and see if it takes it. And then, oh my God, it took it, and that's not supposed to happen. That's an example, right? So your software testers are supposed to catch that kind of stuff, right? Well, so for me, because I do field research out in the real world, I have to focus on real world conditions. Is it going to actually function for real? The self-driving Uber, this is the idea. When I drove Uber for a year, right? And I did that because we just started our company and our restaurant, and we were open for 3 years. But for the first year, it was really tough, and I didn't have any money. So we both drove nights. My wife and I both drove nights, Uber, to make extra money. So, and I had been a taxi driver for years, a long time before that. I owned a fleet of taxis and what have you. And so driving Uber wasn't that big a deal, although it wasn't anywhere near as much adventure. I mean, in a taxi, it's all cash and you have no clue who's getting in your car. Uber, they can track all these people. So it's not quite the same adventure. You don't get anywhere near the same amount of drug dealers. Anyway, so what would happen is that, in Uber, right, people who are, would ask me all the time, like, what about the self-driving Uber is going to replace all the Uber drivers? I'm like, no, it's really not. It's a great thing that the people in Uber do to keep getting investors, to keep hustling investors to give them more money. That's why they bring up these ideas. They have an Uber that does self-driving here and there, and under certain very limited and very highly controlled conditions, that stuff will work. The challenge comes in when the addresses aren't right, or let's be real here. Actually, let me just talk to you straight. I'm going to talk to you the way that I would talk to anybody who's right in front of me, who's never done it before. The self-driving Uber is not taking into account the guy who goes to get in the car and who passes out, and then he pisses himself, and then he shits himself, and he probably has alcohol poisoning. Probably should go to the hospital, and now the Uber driver has to figure out how to deal with that. A self-driving Uber isn't going to deal with that. A self-driving Uber is just going to, send an automated message to the police and the cops, or somehow, because they have nothing else better to do at 2:00 on a Saturday, right? 2:00 a.m. on a Saturday, let's say be a Saturday morning, 2 a.m. They have nothing else better to do except go to some Uber and pull some guy out of the car who's pissed and shit himself respectively. Oh, and who probably also puked as well. Right. And then, of course, who wants to get in that car after that? Who's going to clean that car? Do you kind of see where I'm going? It's like the so-called automated McDonald's. You saw the burger douche that's automated. And it's kind of like, oh my God, it's going to automate. It's no more $15 an hour employees and such. Like it's fake, right? I mean, you understand, it's the same kind of thing that the Soviets did with their little cities that worked perfectly when the media showed up. Everything worked great. There's no second thought as to how much work on the back end of that goes in to make that all function. In other words, think of it this way. Well, but look, it's all robotic. It looks cool. Yes, I know. And you have little Chinese slave kids building those little robots, right? And the only reason it's profitable is because the little Chinese slave kids build the fucking robots, right? That's the only reason a lot of that shit works, is because there's a back end. It's the same thing. This has been going on for a very long time. It's again, we're going to do Marxism with robots. It's the same. Like, how many times can everybody get sucked into this? Just like the phrenology 2.0. How many different? The only reason that is, by the way, is because they know that most people eventually die, and they don't take all this knowledge forward. The internet may have changed that. I don't know. We'll see. We won't know. I mean, no one in our lifetime will probably know that stuff. We won't know that until maybe later on, when maybe younger people are watching videos like this 100 years from now, and then they're going, "Oh my God, hold on a second here. This is the same scam. I don't want to fall for that same fucking scam over and over and over." Well, that's exactly what will end up happening, is that you're going to have a bunch of people that fall for the same scam, and they know this. This is why Ponzi schemes keep working. It's why you'll get situations where you have the guy who's going to go, I've talked about the Airport Marriott. I'm always picking on the Airport Marriott guys, the gurus who show up. They know that they will get a certain amount of money off you every single time. They know this. They know this because the numbers, the stats bear out. They know that I would know the same thing, right? I'm reasonably comfortable with speaking, right? In front of a camera and stuff. And even if there was a bunch of people here in front of me, even if I had a studio audience, I would be pretty much the same guy. And I know statistically that if I wanted to try and figure out a way to hustle people and get money off of them, right, then I could come up with some kind of way to get them interested in giving me money. And I know that a certain percentage of people are going to do that, right? They're going to, and they're going to fall for it every single time. My goal here, among of many, my big goal is to bring down the entire dollar system and all this other fake shit once and for all. But among one of those goals, one of my smaller goals, is to get people to call bullshit on all this and say, look, none of that stuff's actually going to work. And, by the way, the only way you're going to be able to actually do all this stuff is to be able to go out and do this stuff yourself. I keep telling everybody that I meet, you kind of need to go out and do some of this stuff and try it out. You're not going to learn a lot of this in universities. Any of the stuff that I'm talking about, you're not going to learn this in a university. You can forget it right now. There's no university out there that's going to, there isn't a university you could pay enough to find somebody to teach this kind of stuff that I'm talking about, because it isn't just content, it's context. It's both. Okay. And to the right set of ears, this stuff is actually really valuable if you've got the right ears, right? If you don't, if you're just going to believe everything you read from the government or whatever, all the people that have been lying to you for decades upon decades, well, I can't touch you, man. Dude, you're on your own. I'm not gonna sit around trying to proselytize. I'm just telling you, this is what I'm seeing. You can either take it seriously or don't take it seriously. I don't really care. So let me take a look at my time. Okay, good. I got about 7 minutes or so. So the automation idea that we're going to somehow automate our way out of work, it's not going to go down the way you think it is. So I wanted to point this out because a lot of this is going to be used as an excuse to have people make progressively less and less and less money. Notice that, and I tweeted this out I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I sent it on my Twitter page on Financial Physics, and I had said that it's just notice that prices fluctuate based on. I hear this from the free market guys all the time. They all talk about free markets, which again I call bullshit for most people that say they want free markets, because most people don't want free markets. They want a market that works for them. That's what they want. They don't want a free market, because a free market means you're going to fail repeatedly, over and over and over, and then you're going to finally find something that's going to work, right? And then that's when it clicks, and then you learn something from it, and then you do hopefully the next the awesome thing, which is to then, after you're comfortable, you've got everything set up and stuff, then you do actually teach some of it. You teach what you learned to the next generation of people. That's sort of the neighborly thing to do. I don't want to say it's the right thing to do, because I'm not bound by good and evil here. I just think it's the neighborly thing to do. It's something that you would want to do even if you didn't necessarily like your neighbor, right? Like I'm going to put my neighbor's house, if his house is on fire, even if I don't like the guy, I'm going to put his house out, or I'm going to help him because number one, I would want him to help me with that, but also because I don't want his house, to the fire to spread and get my house, right? So the boogeyman of automation, a lot of it's going to be used to get rid of a bunch of people in these jobs as everything contracts, right? This is a very predictable thing. It's just like you're going to see stores, all the big stores, all these marts and box stores and all these mega stores, you'll start seeing them close down, a whole bunch of them. Why? Because what's the difference? You can go into 10 different stores, right? And they all have the same brands. It's all made by the same stuff. Same companies. And like if you want to buy a KitchenAid mixer, right? You can go to Bed Bath & Beyond, you can go to Macy's, you can go to Nordstrom's. You can go almost anywhere, and you can go to Amazon. So it's kind of like, why go to these stores? They're not really competing. They're really not competing, if you understand. Which is why, again, you're going to see more and more of those marts and box stores closing down. There just isn't enough people to support that. Remember, we talked about a couple sessions ago. We were talking about time value. As you get older, your time becomes significantly more valuable to you, and it just gets more valuable the older you get. And you start not wanting to play the game as much anymore. You're like, okay, hold on, I kind of have things to do. And for most of us, as we grow up, that's what happens. We start taking things a little more seriously, and we're going, okay, hold on, I don't have time to run all over Hell and Gone or something like that. I'm just going to order it, it's the same product. Somebody's getting it from Amazon, even if it's $10 more. So if it saves me a whole bunch of time, like that's how that works. And that's why Amazon's, the juggernaut that it is now. Lots of companies could compete with that, by the way. Just, UPS could pivot to that. It's just a logistics company. It's a website and logistics company. That's all it's pretty much turned into. And they don't have any inventory taxes. Which, by the way, inventory taxes is a horrible idea to do to businesses, because it basically encourages businesses to not have inventory and to not spend a lot of money on flooring inventory. It's not a very good idea, I don't think, anyway. So I hope some of that kind of helps. For some of you out there that are like, oh my God, everything's automated. Like it's really, a lot of stuff isn't going to be as automated and as AI'd as you might think. A lot of this stuff is going to end up being like the layoffs and what have you. A lot of those things are going to come from other factors in the business world, just other reasons that are just going to coincide nicely. And of course, what that'll end up doing is it's going to smash credit scores. It's going to smash, a whole bunch of stuff, and which is one of the reasons why I say, like, well, kind of why bother? If the banks aren't going to loan money anyway, then who gives a shit about your credit score, right? For real. Well, but the landlords, what about the landlords? And it's like, well, dude, what about the landlords? Most of the rent seekers that are out there, you understand, eventually they're going to need to put people in those houses anyway, so it ain't going to make any difference whether you have good score or not. They're going to have to put people in there if they want to continue to have to ride their gravy train, right? It's sort of like if you want to win Monopoly, then I'll kind of leave you with this. If you want to win a Monopoly, you know how you win a Monopoly. Let's be real. Let's cut all the bullshit. You know how you win a Monopoly? Here's what you do. When you land on Baltic Avenue and someone says, oh my God, pay me rent and everything, you say, listen, motherfucker, you take that little green shit shack and just shove it right back up your ass. Okay? I'm going to blow your fucking head off. That's how you win at Monopoly. It's really simple. So till then, we'll see you next time. I got to go on we'll go over some other stuff.